Hello, Kathryn here. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to this video. Today I'm doing another polyglot analysis. So this is a video called Spanish in a Month. It's about 5 years old, and the guy that filmed it is a 20-year-old digital nomad. That sounds familiar. Now, when it comes to this guy, I'm going to be honest with you, I actually really like this cat. He kind of reminds me of my student, so I kind of have that professor-like protection of him. There's some unintentional hilarity just because, just showing how inept people are in the beginning stages of learning. Now, the thing I'm going to focus on, though, is his heavy reliance on external motivation and external structure.
Reaching level B1 requires minimal grammar. It requires a little bit of grammar, but not a lot. So I would highly recommend for the next month that you do not worry about conjugation and you don't worry about
I guess this is another method in which grammar isn't emphasized at all, really.
These are not going to help you out in this project.
I really dislike this notion that grammar is something that you return to at some point and then have to retroactively fix your bad grammar. Grammar is supposed to be like foundational stones. Get it right from the beginning.
Holding you back from having comfortable conversations.
He's just as bored as we are.
Lean towards studying more words by teachers to help me with the project.
Luckily, the teacher I found in person was incredible.
Now, throughout this entire month-long process, he has enlisted the aid of coaches, tutors, software, an accountability coach. I guess he runs like an accountability website. The entire structure, basically, of this regime is externally constructed.
Future, short future is similar to English. When you say, I'm going to Carolina, that's because that's a destination, there's a place. And you can use it.
Now, to me, it just seems that he's actually out of his element. He doesn't know how to study a language effectively, probably due to just inexperience. He's very young, he's only 20. So he's feeling out of his depth, more than likely. But I think also all of these different methods and these different people coming at him and setting this up for him might actually have the opposite effect and be overwhelming.
But also help me express myself in a wide variety of situations once I add more vocabulary. There are connectors like before, after, but.
So obviously a time challenge is going to require a task-oriented approach, which is what we see here, and that we also saw in the video I did for Nathaniel Drew.
Right, straight, go back. I've taken a big list of these important words and wrote them down on my window, a makeshift whiteboard. When I know each word cold, I can erase it. Before I start memorizing things too much though, I need to make sure my pronunciation is on point. This will help with listening as well, but it will prevent me from memorizing a word with the English pronunciation.
See, already at this point, I think that this project is over-engineered. I don't really think you need to stretch out the methods too much at this point. You're at the very beginning.
Creator of the mimic method. He's famous for speaking with no accent at all in each of his 6 languages, and the rhythmic phonetic song training he uses.
So at this point, he had the initial consultant, the in-home tutor, writing on his window, and now he's enlisting this mimic instructor.
Native speakers. And when I say mimicking, I mean the sounds they make and recreating the sounds they make to communicate. We really get technical and train your ears, train your mouth to be able to create those sounds.
My dude, you need to be writing things down. None of this is going to stick in your head if you don't write it down.
Now that I have my strategy in place, it's time to set some stakes. I've got a lot of motivation already, but this project requires an extra kick in the ass. This is Brian Kwong, founder of the Add One Challenge, a language learning accountability community and has helped
So
hundreds
now my
of
man's gonna
people
enlist this guy
given the
to hold
magnitude
him
of the
accountable
challenge,
to a
we need
plan
some
built by
serious
others.
accountability. And Brian's just
This,
like
I think, is where things are gonna go a little
now we
bit
got the manual.
sideways.
Now we got to break it down. So you have 30 days. If there's nothing at stake.
What he's talking about is an external incentive. So it's either going to be positive or it's going to be negative. There has to be some kind of incentive to get him to be accountable to his own goal.
More motivated by rewards, but some people can have both. So what works for you in terms of putting something at stake?
I think I need like a major sting if I don't follow through.
Ooh, so what is that?
He has chosen a negative incentive, so he is going to hurt if he does not follow through.
It's $500 that I'll send you.
$500 each day?
If I don't make it out any day, if I miss 3 days, that's $15.
This is an open call. I will yell at you and receive $500 a day if you do not stick to your own plan. This is the business I should be in. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a really lofty goal and you want to put $500 a day at stake for being accountable, I'm right here.
It's time to get to work.
I'll even be nice about yelling at you.
2, 3, 4, done. Dati, 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 dati.
I've never used software like this. I can't really speak to its efficacy, but this is going to add to his overall cost.
This process may look a bit weird. What am I really achieving here? But it works. Brady Dallas promises, after 2 weeks of doing this 2 hours a day, slowly tuning my tongue and ear, my pronunciation is on point.
I've noticed that the way that he's engaging in the language is very passive. He needs to actually write. Just as much as he needs to speak, he needs to write. Staring at your phone as you're walking on the treadmill isn't going to do much for long-term memory retention. It's just not.
¿Dónde vive usted?
Estados Unidos
¿En qué parte?
y Florida.
Florida.
Sí.
¿Con quién vive?
No vive ahora, mi familia vive en Key West.
Key West.
Es en isla sur de Miami.
Sí.
Sí.
¿Y aquí con quién está? En Medellín. ¿Con quién?
Por 4 meses.
Solo.
Alright, so it's obvious that this conversation's not going that well, but you know what? This is about what I would expect after 2 weeks of work, even for many hours a day. So, I don't know, this just seems more authentic to me.
¿Cómo le parece?
¿Cómo te parece?
¿Cómo le parece Medellín? ¿Cómo es?
Yo me gusta.
¿Le gusta? ¿Qué le gusta?
¿Qué?
¿Qué le gusta?
¿Es muy diferente de Estados Unidos o solo Europa?
His Spanish-speaking companion is a really good sport in all this. He's not embarrassing him in any way. I mean, he knows that he's a beginner, so I think this is actually really good.
¿Abierto?
Abierta.
Abierta, caliente.
¿La cultura o el clima?
La cultura.
You may have noticed that I made quite a few mistakes, but I don't regret a single one of them. In fact, if I hadn't been willing to make lots of mistakes, that conversation would have never...
This is a really good attitude he has, especially in the beginning when it's really frustrating and, you know, you can barely hold a very simple conversation. If he were able to keep up this optimism and patience and just keep going, I think he'd be great.
In 30 days, you can go from nothing to expressing almost any idea. You can communicate almost any idea after 30 focus days.
So again, although this is very task-oriented, this is actually kind of an organic way of doing things. If you expect perfection in the very beginning, he already knows that not only is this self-limiting, it's self-defeating. You can't expect it. It's not possible. And a lot of times, if people don't live up to where they think they should be, then they're just going to throw in the towel and go nowhere. And that's not what he wants. He has to overcome those barriers, those hurdles of exhaustion and frustration and struggling. So, yeah, he's right on the money.
You need to conjugate less than 10 verbs. And you only need 1 past, 1 future, which you had
Because
to
this is a timed experiment, he's obviously making some shortcuts with
if you
grammar.
screw up the gender, someone's
I
still going to understand you.
I still think that this is
You
wrongheaded.
can communicate
Go ahead and
any
get
information
the
you want.
grasp of
So try to be
the
perfect
basic
with
grammar
the
as much as you
vocabulary
can.
communicate.
It doesn't necessarily have to take that long to learn, just enough to match with the adjectives and the nouns. Now, I know that that seems like a lot, especially when you're trying to be able to be conversational after 30 days, but I really do think that you should invest some time on that and maybe pull back a little bit on things like the mimicking practice.
It's 4 a.m. on a Wednesday.
So because he's relying almost entirely on an externally constructed schedule for his studying and learning, and also external incentives, and not only that, but a negative incentive, he will have to pay $500 if he does not study. So he's up very, very early. He doesn't want to do it at 4 a.m. It's not an organic way of incorporating practice into your life. If you don't enjoy it, if it's attached to negative emotions, then how are you going to keep going when there's very little inside of you that is propelling your own self towards success? This is why I think you need to focus more on feeling internal motivation.
As I'm not quite done with the Dallas pronunciation program, Brian agreed to letting me change those 2 hours into vocabulary training, as long as I finish the program by the end.
He's actually getting permission from others to modify his schedule to better serve a different area that he feels weak on. This is a bit reminiscent of maybe high school. He is very young, so it takes a while to kind of grow out of that student mentality. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but again, you need to have a bit more of your own grip on the reins, rather than relying on everyone else.
Especially vocab. But it's not all roses.
There's an interesting dichotomy going on with my tutor being really happy with my progress and thinking that I'm doing amazing.
So I've referred to the frustration hurdle or barrier before. This is something that you have to resist and push up against because it's going to happen a lot. Even if others tell you, give you that external validation, if you're not dealing with this internally and kind of, resisting it, overcoming it, pushing past it, and then taking a break when you need it, then you're just not, you're just going to associate more negative emotions with the process. That's not what you want to do.
I had a couple really great.
So now his frustration is being compounded by that dangling negative incentive over his head.
It's 1 a.m. on the last day, and my accountability was I had to finish the mimic method before the end of the month. And I'm an idiot, and I procrastinated, and I put all the shit off to the last couple of days.
And lo and behold, now he's going to have to fork out $500. So even with something that stings that badly when you're not being accountable to your own plan, you can still basically cheat yourself.
Of me finishing this tonight. And that means I owe Brian $500.
Again, I will hold people accountable for $500 a day. Just please contact me through Instagram. The link is in my description.
$150 for a pronunciation course, and now $500 paid to Brian for failing my accountability. Let's see if it was all worth it.
So he's heading into the very end of his challenge, feeling kind of defeated that he failed himself. Now he's out $500, and he's very frustrated with his progress. This is very, very unnecessary. And now we're going to see if it worked, but I have a feeling he wouldn't be happy with the result.
Una advertencia, parce.
No, ya.
No sé ni puta.
¿Y hace cuánto vivís en Medellín, Connor?
¿Cuánto
¿Hace
tiempo?
cuánto estás en Medellín?
Como llegué hace 5 semanas solo.
5 semanas.
Sí.
Excelente. ¿Y hasta cuándo te quedas? ¿Cuándo te vuelves a Estados Unidos?
Volver a Estados Unidos. Nunca.
¿Vas a seguir?
No, en noviembre. Pero voy a Asia, Bangkok, en la medio de octubre para una conferencia. Sí.
Wow. ¿Viajar por todo el mundo?
Sí. ¿Por qué no?
¿A qué más países has ido, Connor?
¿Qué más? 35.
¿35 qué? ¿35 países?
Sí.
Wow.
Un poquito.
Hijo.
Sí.
Y nos perdimos. Entonces yo hacía, lo único que hacía era manejar el carro todo el día porque mi hermano no sabía dónde quedaba nada. Entonces para ir a buscar un hamburguesa.
So I edited out a chunk of the conversation in which he was actually holding his own. You can see in this bit here that he does get a little bit lost because the guy is speaking very quickly and he's kind of going off on a tangent. But you know what? He's actually done really well. So he gets a very good prognosis from this native speaker. I'd say job well done.
Interactuar muy bien con personas nativas.
Look, nothing I did is special. All I did is focus on the things we know work. Lots of speaking with a native, SRS training, understanding that language is just sound, learn the most useful grammar and vocab first, focus on communication, not perfection, and then just put in the time. I spent about 150 hours this month, and I've seen that number with these methods be about true for others coming to a conversational level, whether you do it in 1 month, 3, or 6. You don't need a better piece of software. You need to talk to a real.
I'm in agreement with Connor that language is boiled down to very simple concepts. However, I think that the project was constructed in a way that really, really intensified pressure on him at a time when he needs to be able to cope with frustration and exhaustion. If, however, he's exiting this project feeling like he wants to continue, then it could be that he did, in fact, cope with the exhaustion and frustration. And this will be something that he will need to do as he continues. Now, I understand that many beginners, and in fact, just some people in general, prefer a very structured and strict regime and having an accountability partner and actually having something at stake. However, I still kind of stand by my stance that all of this was not necessary and that he seems to have had the same progress as other people who have put in the similar amount of hours. And he also concludes by saying you don't need special software, but he did use special software. So I don't know if that was basically him saying that it wasn't really necessary. I don't know, it's a bit ambiguous. But I think that this could have actually been a self-defeating project, only because the internal motivation is just not very high. And I think that in the beginning, your internal motivation needs to be very high. Otherwise, again, you're going to associate learning and studying and speaking with very negative and stressful emotions, which is something you don't want, especially when you're at the beginning stages and everything is new and unknown to you. And when you listen to the target language, virtually all of it is incomprehensible. What I would suggest is that if you're a person that does want someone to put together a regime for you, you still need to focus internally on what is driving you. Why is it that you want to learn the language? Now for him, because he was traveling the world and he happened to be in a Spanish-speaking country, and maybe he just wanted to push himself, then that was a motivation, kind of a catalyst to start this project in motion. But as you can see, it was a very frustrating experience all the same, and he had to fork out money. When I was a bit younger, I also wanted external accountability, and I actually tried to enlist a couple professors that would sign on my progress. Now, of course, that was ridiculous and a stupid thing to ask them, but I didn't succeed in whatever that was I was trying. I just did not have the internal motivation required. Momentum is something that's really hard to achieve. But that's what he needs. That's what I needed in order to actually find habits that stuck. And the difference was building the internal motivation. Really think about what it is that animates it. What is animating your drive to pursue this project? Anyway, that's my take on this young man's video. Like I said, I actually really liked him. I think that he put himself out there. I think he was transparent about his progress and his feelings. So for that, I applaud him. If you found any value in this, please consider liking the video, commenting, subscribing, and I will see you later.